Ashish. Kalpavriksh es una organización de la sociedad civil en Nueva Delhi, en la India, que trabaja en la construcción de alternativas. Él nos puede explicar más ese trabajo. Tenemos también a Mónica Vargas, investigadora del proyecto de poder corporativo del Transnational Institute, del TNI, pero está en Barcelona radicada. A Joana García Gresner, feminista, periodista, investigadora, experta en género, que además acaba de unirse a un proyecto cooperativo. Tenemos a Laia Fourné, asesora de la Regiduría de Participación del Ayuntamiento de Barcelona. David Fee, de la Universidad de Cape Town, pero también del Transnational Institute, en este caso en Sudáfrica. Y finalmente a Marianne Manahan, de la Red de Derechos Civiles y la Marcha Mundial de Mujeres en Filipinas. Como veis, perfiles bastante diferentes. Yo quiero hacer explícito que a lo largo de toda la jornada, pero también de toda esta semana, no es que hayamos conseguido un balance de género en las ponentes, sino que las aportaciones, ya no solo femeninas, sino feministas, han sido preponderantes, y creo que es algo a destacar, porque desgraciadamente no pasa muy a menudo. Esperemos que llegue un día en que no sea necesario destacarlo, pero creo que es bueno que se haga explícito. Y bueno, vamos a empezar con las preguntas, porque realmente estáis aquí para escucharles a ellas y no a mí. Y vamos a empezar con Ashish, a quien le preguntamos sobre los elementos que definen esa propuesta de democracia radical. What are the elements that define this proposal of radical democracy that you are working on? You can use this one.
Gracias. So, I'll speak in English. My Spanish is very poco. Yes, I'm going to speak from the experience of some of the work that we've been doing in India, but also some of what I know is happening in other parts of the world about the notion of radical ecological democracy. Though this session is on urban transformations, I'm not focusing only on urban areas, because I do believe that unless one also transforms rural areas in the countryside, the cities are going to remain in a mess. So, across India, actually, we've been documenting hundreds of examples of initiatives, grassroots initiatives, conceptual initiatives at people trying to transform their lives into more equitable, more just, more ecologically resilient and wise ways. There are 850 examples of this already on a website that we run, and there's many more. So some of what I'll speak is from the experience from these different examples. Just quickly, 2 or 3 examples just to highlight the kind of thing I'm talking about. This is an example that already came up in the morning. It's there as a case study in the book that Miriam presented, which is a village in central India which has essentially declared in the last 30 years that while we elect the government in New Delhi and Mumbai, in our village we are the government. And that all decisions to be taken in this village will be taken only by us, and they'll be taken by the entire village assembly by consensus, where all the women and men and often the children also participate. And also that we will try and make sure that we have the maximum possible information for us to take a decision that is informed, which means our own traditional and local knowledge, but also sometimes if we need it, we call people from outside to also give us knowledge and information, especially relating to national policies or global trends and so on. And they've practiced this for the last 30 years. We have an example in Western India of a city where something similar, not quite as radical and dramatic, but somewhat similar initiative, especially in the poorer colonies of this city, where people who really don't have access even to basic needs like water and housing, they have in the last 10-15 years been able to transform their lives by claiming self-governance and self-management over things like water and housing and energy and information relating to the governance of a city, and asserting that whatever decisions are taken with regard to our city need to be taken with us or through us, and not by some bureaucrats and politicians sitting somewhere who are alienated from us. So this is an interesting example There are many cities in India where something similar is happening in terms of participatory budgeting or local harvesting of water, local energy sovereignty, zero waste colonies and so on. So there's some interesting things happening in the cityscape also. A third example I want to give is a very interesting one. This is something that ran for 10-12 years in western India in a very dry region which has very low rainfall. And here about 65 villages got together to form a people's parliament to manage an entire river basin. What they were saying is that we don't believe in the existing political boundaries that divide us. We believe that the river basin is a political unit for decision making. So these 65 villages actually formed through representatives from each of these villages formed this parliament, which met every 6 months to decide on water sharing, on the protection of forests, on inter-village disputes and many other such things. It ran extremely well for 10-12 years. It began to become weak in recent times, but it's a very interesting example of a different kind of democratic model. Of course, there are similar and other kinds of examples across the world, I just put this up here. I also love this map because it's a very decolonizing map. As you can see, Europe is way down south, at the bottom and not on the top as our colonial maps are, and England virtually disappears. But also just to show a very small sample of alternative initiatives. Based on all of this, what we've been talking about in terms of a new kind of politics is threefold. Number one, that the real power needs to be at the level of ordinary people like us. At wherever we are, that we assert that decisions that affect our lives should be taken by and or through us. So that's direct or radical democracy. And you can have larger levels of this through referendums. Of course, referendums can also go horribly wrong. And in a minute, I'll also mention what I think are some of the preconditions for a democracy like this to work in a just way. The second level would be the representative and delegated democracy, because obviously at larger scales you cannot have face-to-face decision making all the time. But then how does one make that accountable through things like right to recall representatives, through public audits, through public hearings and so on, rotations, etc. And the third, and I think in some senses the most revolutionary one, is to start questioning our current political boundaries, whether they're within nation states or between nation states, and actually even beginning to question the notion of nation states itself, because they often do not make ecological and cultural sense. So how do you reconfigure politics itself to make it much more in tune with ecological and cultural contiguities and linkages and so on? So therefore maybe even beginning to imagine a borderless world. Not going to happen soon, but at least we can start thinking about it. I think there are at least 4 things that are absolutely necessary for this kind of a radical democracy to work. Number one, that each of us needs to have the right and fight for the right to participate in all decision making. As I said earlier in a comment, I don't think any country actually has that. The second is that we all need to build the capacity to participate meaningfully, because just having the right is not adequate. And the capacity includes things like information. So going back to that central Indian village where they say we will try and build the information base for a decision that really is will hold us in the long run. The third thing is to have accessible forums. Accessible forums where, and accessible doesn't simply mean that something is happening every month, like a village assembly is happening every month. It also means that if I'm a woman who has been kept out of a decision-making forum for generations or centuries, then I need to be able to have the atmosphere in that forum in which I can meaningfully participate. It also means, of course, things like proximity to where you are and many other things. And the fourth and the most difficult and most essential, I think, is the maturity or the wisdom or the responsibility of taking decisions in ways that are just for others, that are just for the environment and so on. And this is where the Indian notion of Swaraj becomes very important, because Swaraj essentially means autonomy and freedom in responsibility to others' autonomy and freedom. And by others, like I said earlier, it also means other species. So the human, the non-human, and all parts of human society.